What is the most unorthodox way you know of that a couple has met and fallen in love? Story 1. We knew each other only a little bit through friends. I was badly injured in an industrial accident. I needed time to heal. I lived alone, and it was dangerous for me not to have someone who could check on me periodically. She happened to be recovering from eye surgery and wasn't able to her job or drive for a couple weeks, and offered me her guest bedroom until I could safely go home. I think it felt safe for her to make the offer. I was pretty much completely incapacitated and barely ambulatory. We had an amazing 25 years before she died. I'll always love her. Story 2. I only heard this from a friend, but I find it hilarious. My friend went to a house party with this dude. This dude decided to wear his Pikachu costume to the party, although it wasn't a costume party. Then he met her at the party. She also wears her Pikachu costume. I met them once. They were super funny. They are married. End of story. Story 3. My grandparents told me about a woman who met her fiancé's cousin during the rehearsal dinner, night before the wedding. Everyone noticed they spent an inordinate amount of time chatting that night, but no one thought anything of it. The cousin went to talk to the bride just before the wedding, and the two of them left together. They've been married 62 years. Story 4. My great-aunt went to Paris to study art in the 1950s, sunk into a depression, and went out to throw herself into the Seine. Along came a Frenchman who was fresh out of the Foreign Legion. He talked her off the bridge, talked his way into her heart, pants, and they both moved to Sweden together and lived happily painting together for about 40 years. Story 5. My brother and I took our 3-year-old niece to a toy store. I needed to pick something up for a baby shower, and my bro was flying a small plastic Incredible Hulk drone that was on display just to keep my niece entertained. The drone got tangled in this random girl's long flowing locks. My brother tried to help her get it out. He made it worse. The girl was getting pissed, and that was before my impatient niece got a hold of the controller and tried to make the drone fly while it was still tangled in the girl's hair. Somehow out of this, my brother managed to get this girl's number, a date, and now they're married and about to give me another niece. Story 6. My sister swiped the side of a guy's brand new car. She said he got out of his car, stormed over in a rage, and had a comical change of expression, demeanor as soon as he got a look at her. They've been together 3 years. Also, I'm too good a driver, that's my problem. Story 7. My dad was a young Catholic priest, and my mom volunteered at his parish, helping bring food and meds, etc., to elderly shut-ins. They met and fell in love. As a direct result of this, my dad was sent asterisk by the bishop to Lima, Peru, to physically, as in construction work, build a school and do some soul-searching. My dad soul-searched and helped build a school. He came back and told the bishop that he no longer wanted to be a priest and wanted to marry my mom. The bishop gave them his blessing and personally married them in the cathedral. I am named after the bishop, so my siblings, my mother, and I are all grateful that Dad chose us over his marriage to God. Maybe this isn't the best story, but it's the story I've got. Asterisk edit. For clarity, my dad was encouraged by the bishop to volunteer with Mary Knoll for a period of time. Story 8. I read a memoir of a Holocaust survivor, Magda Hellinger, who met her husband in Auschwitz. Apparently, a drunk German guard who knew her by sight told her to come over one day. He started asking her weird, uncomfortable questions like, "Are you married? Do you have a boyfriend?" And she says something like, No, I don't have time. I'm not really that pretty," etc. She, of course, wants to get away from the situation as fast as possible. But the German soldier is like, "What? No, we must find you a boyfriend. What about that man?" and points to a random Jewish prisoner who is walking by. The drunk guard tells the man to come over and essentially starts organizing a date for them. She pretends to agree, but never shows up for the date. But somehow, she and this Jewish man end up talking and fall in love. They both survived the camp and got married, started a family, and lived the rest of their life happily together. TLDR. A hammered German guard decides to play matchmaker to 2 Jewish prisoners of Auschwitz, and they fall in love and live happily ever after. Story 9. Not my story, but someone posted on here about how their parents met. Before his dad met his mom, he had a long-term, very serious GF he was on the verge of proposing to. The two of them were supposed to see the Back to the Future sequel together the night it came out. But the dad had a family emergency. His grandfather had a stroke or something. He asked his GF to hold off on seeing it until they could go together. She reluctantly agreed. He later found out she had gone with a male classmate she was friendly with and who he did not like at all. He was pissed. The girl said it was selfish of him to expect her to wait just because he had to. She offered to go see it again with him, but he said he'd rather go on his own. At this point, the dad was upset, but he fully expected he and his GF would move past this. Then he went to the movie and met OP's mom. It was love at first sight and the GF was history. I'm oddly fond of the story. Story 10. My parents, back in the 70s, met whilst being pen pals from a certain UK newspaper. My dad was in the forces, and they basically fell in love over the course of writing letters to one another. They got married, whilst only having met in person a few times, and the marriage lasted almost 30 years until his death at a relatively young age, 52. Story 11. My college roommate Jeremy saw a ridiculously beautiful woman in Target pharmacy area senior year in high school. He walked up to her and matter-of-factly said, "So you do drugs, huh?" They've been married 15 years with a few kids. Eat it. He was a senior in college, not high school, LOL. Story 12. My parents met when my dad was living with another woman and my mom was engaged. They worked at the same department store. My dad had been there longer. She didn't like him when she started there. They were in separate sections of the store, and they were always trying to outdo each other. Shortly after their mutual relationships broke up, they joined the same company softball team. My dad was the coach, my mom was the pitcher. She was great in practice and absolutely tanked their first game. And he was very nice in front of the team, but absolutely roasted her at the bar afterwards. They played one-on-one tennis on their first date. And eventually these two super competitive people raised a child who grew up to be a game designer. Story 13. Fortune teller. Ah, the mists are clearing. You are going to meet a handsome stranger. I sense that he is a kind, caring man. The spirits say he has a well-paid job. He installs air conditioning. You know, this sounds a lot like my son. I'll give you his number. They are still together, with kids, 20 years later. And people think that fortune telling is a scam. Story 14. When my sister was in college, she was crossing the street when she was hit by a car, driven by an illegal immigrant who ran a red light. She went flying 10 feet, landed in some bushes, and was miraculously unharmed aside from a few scrapes. The driver tried to flee because he didn't speak a lick of English and obviously didn't have a license. A random guy, who witnessed the whole thing, reached through the open driver's side window, grabbed him by the collar and started shouting, "You make a habit of running little girls over and fleeing the scene, bitch! Get the fuck out the car!" To be clear, my sister was not a little girl. She was a 20-year woman who happens to be exactly 5 tall and 100 pounds. My sister didn't want to call the cops because she's very soft-hearted and didn't want to be responsible for this man being jailed or deported when he might be supporting his entire family back home. The random bystander who threatened the driver insisted on walking her to the campus clinic. She didn't want to bother getting checked out until she noticed how cute he was. Doctor told her she may have a concussion and she should not be alone. So she went back to this strange guy's apartment, seriously, because she was already head over heels, no pun intended, for him at that point. They talked and watched movies all night. When he fell asleep, she texted me his pic with the caption, "Meet your future brother-in-law." They're still together. Their politics are pretty far apart, but they seem to genuinely enjoy arguing over shite. Story 15. A great-grandma had an arranged marriage at 18 to a mean drunk who was 25 years older than her. After several kids and 20 years of marriage, he thankfully died. Several years later, after my grandpa graduated university, he invited a college friend to visit. One thing led to another, and my grandma and my grandpa's friend got married. It was quite the scandal for the longest time. Great-grandma was the ultimate cougar. But they had a happy 40-year marriage, and he was the caregiver to my great-grandma when she developed Alzheimer's. Never put her into a home, and she was always clean and well-groomed. He lived about 20 years after that, and though a lot of the family was scandalized, I always thought my great-grandma won the jackpot with her second husband. Story 16. This one is tricky, so I'll do my best to explain it clearly. My maternal uncle dated his younger sister's close friend after college. She was lovely and kind, but they mutually broke up when he decided to become a priest and she decided to teach overseas. He flunked out of seminary school and married someone else, who became my aunt. My mom, that uncle's sister, married a guy, my dad. They had 2 kids, one of them was me. Mom died when I was 6. Dad kept in touch, of course, with my uncle and aunt. Lovely woman who had dated my uncle and later left to teach overseas got married to a guy, got pregnant, and he panicked and bailed. So she came back to the U.S. to have her baby and divorce the bastard, which she did. So, widower dad with 2 kids, one of them me, abandoned divorced mom with 1 kid, lady who dated my uncle and went overseas. Uncle and aunt decide, hey, those 2 might hit it off. Set up a dinner. They got married a year later. Boom. New family that worked out well. Stepmom passed away about 10 years ago, but I always thanked my aunt and uncle for setting up my dad with my future stepmom. And every once in a while, as all of us cousins are going through our family photos, we find photos of my mom with my stepmom when they were friends. It's neat, but kind of weird. TLDR. Uncle set up my dad with uncle's ex-girlfriend / his sister's former BFF. Marriage ensues. Story 17. A co-worker of mine said her dad had been invited to this big get-together in another state. He went to see his friend and saw the co-worker's mom. He said he instantly knew he had to marry her, so he asked if she wanted to get ice cream. She said yes and got in the car with him. Then he said, "Oh, we aren't getting ice cream. I'm taking you back home because we are going to get married." She said, "Okay, that makes sense." My co-worker's family is Hmong, and there is a tradition like this in their community, but she loved telling the story to see everyone's confused and shocked faces. Still not entirely sure if that's the whole story, but she said her parents were super in love, so I'll just have to take her word for it. Story 18. I met my husband on a bus tour of Scotland, where we got chatting and sparks flew straight away. We had a whirlwind romance over 3 days amongst castles, glens, and icy highland streams. We swam in Loch Ness, drank whiskey, and learned about tartan together before the trip was over, and he had to fly home more than 5,000 miles away. Friends and family didn't think it would work, and neither did we. We were in a long-distance relationship between Los Angeles and Edinburgh for nearly 3 years with an over 5,000-mile commute to see each other until we got married. But we agreed at the start. We'd stay together until the relationship stopped being fun. We now live together in Scotland with our daughter, and the Skype ringtone still gives me flashbacks. We're still having fun. Story 19. I was a senior in high school sitting in math class when my Nextel phone went off. I was getting a call from my paternal grandmother. She was having her roof redone at the time, so there was a crew of roofing/construction men working on the house. The first thing out of her mouth in a thick Boston accent, my full name. "Get your A** over here right now. This man brought his lovely son to work today. He is a hard worker, who is home for college for the summer, and he is a good man." I ran out of school to my Jeep, threw on a push-up bra I had in the back, still wearing the dress I had on at school. When I pulled up, I saw him. I was 17, he was 19, and the rest is history. We are 33 and 35 now. We moved out of our small town in central Massachusetts and live our dream life in Hawaii together. Story 20. Place I used to work, met my wife there. There was a girl who worked there. Sweet, beautiful, the whole package. Was set up on a blind date. A photo shoot ran late, so she called the guy back, apologized profusely, told him she'd meet him at the restaurant. The guy laughed and said, "I think you have a wrong number," but he thought she sounded cute, so he asked her out. Turns out he's the head of neurosurgery at a large local hospital group. About 6 months later, he was offered a position in NYC, and she was moving there with him. Same place, one of the artists and her bestie went on a double date arranged by a very early dating site. They had fun, but after the date, the girls got talking and found that neither felt much connection to their own date, but both preferred the other girl's date. The artist married her friend's date, and the friend was engaged to the artist's date last I heard. Story 21. My dad, as an upperclassman, was an RA of a college dorm. My mom was dating one of the residents of his floor. My dad took a shining to her. The end of the school year comes. My mom breaks up with her boyfriend. Early summer, my dad calls her up to ask her to be his date to a friend's wedding. Turns out my dad shares a first and last name with a guy from my mom's hometown who is not a good person. She thinks it's hometown guy and declines. My dad persists and calls her back, and the misunderstanding is straightened out. It turns out my mom was going to be attending that same wedding anyways, as her cousin is the groom. They go to the wedding together and would be married 50 years next summer. Dad passed away a few years ago. Story 22. So I have a mate of mine from work who's a Nepalese immigrant, and I asked him one day why he came to our country. We were talking about another coworker who immigrated more recently. He replied, "I could find another job here, but I couldn't find another wife at home because his wife had come to Oz with their child to become a nurse, I want to say. Don't quote me on that." And so I asked how he met his wife, and he revealed that when he was in his early 30s, his mother basically went, "You should be married," and found him a wife almost immediately. Like, from the point she said that to the wedding was 2 weeks. No joke. You hear a lot about arranged marriages going badly, but I've met both his wife and his daughter, and how the couple speaks of each other, you can tell they're madly in love. Especially him. Every time he speaks on his wife, even if it's just telling me about something she did at work or what she's cooking that night, His entire body and voice screams of how much he loves his wife. It's honestly super adorable, and I hope their love lasts forever.